So, Rob, I think we can kick off if you're good.
Yeah, excellent. Okay.
Great. Well, thanks everyone for joining. My name is Dan Aston. I'm the marketing manager here at Crowd Control HQ. Got a very special guest. You might know of him already. He's got a slight reputation. Super excited to have Rob from Doncaster Council join us, and today we're going to be talking all about how Doncaster Council developed their unique personality and tone of voice on social media, which has actually contributed to, I would say, the success of their social media account, actually attracting sort of national recognition for some of the good stuff that they've been doing, and showing that actually it doesn't have to be all sort of serious, that you can have a bit of fun with it at the same time. So on the slide you should be able to see our faces. So this is me, Dan. I'm the marketing manager at Crowd Control HQ, and Rob, as you probably know already, is the web and digital manager at Doncaster Council, and one of the things he's responsible for is the social media strategy of the council. So thanks again for everyone joining. I'm just going to spend a few seconds introducing you to Crowd Control HQ, because I think for a lot of you it's probably the first time you've sort of had any interaction or engagement with us. So who is Crowd Control HQ? So we are a UK-based social media management software organisation, and we support many organisations in the UK with their social media management, whether it's social media marketing and communications or social customer service, whether you need to focus more on like social media compliance. We do all of that stuff. And what makes us different is that we're fully UK-based support and services team, so you get absolutely exceptional sort of service from our side, which just makes your life a little bit easier, really. And who do we work with? On the slide you should be able to see a few logos of some of the organisations. Rob, can you do me a favour, just flick to the next slide? Sorry, the master controller. No worries. Okay, here we go. Yeah, so there's a few of the organisations that we work with today. We work with public sector and private sector organisations, but you know, we're super excited to be part of the local council, public sector community, and super proud to work with these organisations amongst many others. And that's it. So over to you, Rob, I think, for the main for the good stuff.
Fantastic. Thanks, Dan. Thanks for the introduction there.
No worries.
And welcome, everyone. Thank you. Welcome to my spare room. I think I've had so many people who have been here before, so great to have you along. Yeah, you've already heard who I am and what I do. And I'm from Doncaster Council, so you might know us from things like the time we had a speedboat dumped on one of the streets in Doncaster, the time when we had an invasion of our blue bins into the authority, and the time when we thought it'd be a really good idea to open up our many of our gritters to the general public on the internet, which actually didn't go quite as bad as expected, so we're quite pleased with that one. So I know we've sort of seen the title slide there, which is kind of the official one, but in short, this is kind of really what we're talking about today, is this whole sort of idea of, you know, we don't speak council around here. We try to be a little bit different with our comms at Doncaster, and I think this is probably the crux of what we're talking about today. And I think the one thing, hopefully, that I'd like you to come away from today with the idea that really, you know, nothing that we've done can't be replicated elsewhere. You know, it's just about sort of being brave, it's about taking a few risks, and just to sort of push the boundaries a bit with what we're talking about, the stories that we're sharing, and the sort of content that we put out there. So I'm going to start with something which may or may not work. In a virtual environment, we'll try it anyway, and bonus points for those of you who are sat in an office today. I really want you to take part in this. I'd like you to raise your hand if you have ever created an interesting piece of content or a story that you really put yourself heart and soul into, only to find that when you release it onto social media, you find that it doesn't really get the reaction that you're hoping for. And that's certainly
my hand is fully up. Rob, I've just got to say, I think, I don't know if there's a bit of background noise getting picked up. I don't know if there's anything you can do, or just maybe hold the mic nearer to you, zoom out. I don't know if it would
oh, sorry about that. Is that better?
A little bit, yeah. A little bit.
It's maybe banging against my chest band. Sorry about that. Yeah, if you've ever had sort of that sinking feeling, really, and that's certainly where we started our journey here with improving our content on social media, particularly on Twitter. So once we sort of identified the problem, we wanted to start looking into that. Why was the case? Why were we not getting that level of engagement? So, you know, we wanted to try and explore that a bit further and try and find out, you know, where was it that we were going wrong. Quite a few places, as it turns out, there were lots of opportunities for us there. I think one of the first aspects was really the sort of the whole quantity versus quality argument. You know, we were very good at putting out lots of content, but the actual quality of that content was quite questionable and wasn't necessarily there for our audience. So that's somewhere to sort of start looking at from there. And also, you know, the content we were putting out there was largely different, to be honest with you. You know, we were really giving the one show a run for their money with their sort of ridiculous segues from one topic to the next, because it could be bins one moment and it could be our monitoring services next. So, you know, clearly we need to be a bit more savvy with the planning of that content, I think, really. And probably the crux of today and the thing that we're going to talk about brand personality was this point about how perhaps inconsistent we were with our voicing today. Yeah, there's about 15 of us in the comms team, and we were all on a rota basis, and we were all chipping in and having conversations and pushing content. You know, and I think that the problem with that is that it can sometimes risk being inconsistent. And not just that, but also our customer services team will also respond to people on there. So, you know, we need to explore really back on and improve that going forward. And finally, this is probably something maybe we're all guilty of at times. You know, we weren't really using social media in the way it's intended as a social platform, and we were sort of potentially broadcasting more than we were having actual conversations with our public, and that's something which we, you know, have been working on to try and improve really. And I think it's very easy to slip into that mode. So this is really what this is about. So yeah, clearly, you know, things have to improve. We needed to make some changes to try and push things forward.
Rob, I'm sorry to jump in again. I'm just wondering, I know we talked about using the headset. I wonder if you have got a different microphone. We're just getting a few people saying that they're struggling with the audio on your side.
I've not got anything. I can unplug the headphones and try that through the laptop and switch it for the board if that helps.
Yeah. See if that works.
Sorry guys, you're struggling to hear us. Hopefully that would be better. Just unplug my headset, my headphones. So let's just hope that's the case. We met with a plan inevitably, and that's something that we needed to improve upon. And quite simply, the sort of starting point for this was really for us to have more positive conversations with people about the work we do. And I want to underline that point there about conversations, because again, that was the key thing that we weren't really necessarily doing as much as we probably should be doing. One of the questions quite often we ask about some of that content and some of the things we've done, and you'll appreciate something that can be quite quirky, is how on earth did we get leadership on board? Well, you know, we're all sort of in a private space, you're in the confines of my four walls, and I thought it'd be a good opportunity to reveal that secret to you today. The secret of how we got our leadership on board? Yeah, we didn't actually tell them. A little bit naughty, but it was one of those things where, you know, we thought, actually, we just got to be a bit brave here, have some courage in our convictions, and just try and push the boundaries a little bit, step by step. So, you know, that really sort of started with us trying to take some risks, really, not sort of silly risks, because, you know, you can have the boldest sort of objective and vision in the world, but you know, the way you go about trying to achieve that ends up with, you know, doing some things which you should really be doing. There's only one inevitable outcome, and that's this. So thanks for our HR team for providing that slide for us today. So just sort of give a bit of context around that, really. Probably one of the great campaigns to share which puts this into a bit more context is Invasion. Now, you may have heard of Invasion, but if not, I'll give you a bit of a practical history. But Invasion really stemmed from this scene here. We had the need to introduce a new waste and recycling service, and specifically one of the aspects of that was a new blue recycling bin. And one of our officers, Liam, who actually left us now, unfortunately, but he came up with the great concept of Invasion. And it came from this photo, and he just felt when he saw this that it just looked like an army of bins waiting to invade the borough. So lo and behold, sort of the Invasion was born, really, and it sort of drew from the likes of the Army and the Blair Witch Project in terms of the campaign content and the copy, and you can sort of see an example there on the screen. But, you know, it wasn't an average campaign. We tried to be a little bit different and try and engage people around what was fundamentally a boring topic. And that's the beauty, I think, of campaigns like this, is to try and be that little bit different. And what was lovely about Invasion, you know, I'm sure yourselves, we've all sort of been there and tried to get our own sort of hashtag on something and getting a bit of engagement. And generally, this doesn't tend to work, but we were absolutely blown away, and the campaign seemed to resonate with people. And to the point where, people were starting to send us their own content, and they were taking their own pictures of bins, even to the point where they were actually strapping appendages to the bins and sort of treating them like they were Daleks and making video content, which was absolutely mind-blowing. So, just by being that little bit different and changing the concept of the bins invading, as opposed to a very straight corporate, we are going to be delivering bins and you need to do this, that and the other, it seemed to resonate quite nicely with the audience. I can't obviously show you all those examples and some of the lovely user-generated stuff that we've got sent, but we've actually got 2 Twitter moments that we've created on our Doncaster account. So, please head over onto there and scroll through and have a look at those just to see the examples of what went out. And the other one as well, which I'd love to show you, but I don't think it worked particularly well over the webinar, is this video, which again is sort of inspired by Blair Witch Project. And it was about the trip to the waste transfer station to try and find out exactly what was going on. So I won't say any more than that, but the link's there at the bottom. So please make a quick note of that. And so just bit.ly/invasion bid, and have a look at that in your own time.
It's definitely worth a watch if you haven't seen it. It's a good few minutes spent.
Ridiculous, but yeah, enjoy. But there's a serious point to all of this, really, and I think again the fundamental reason why this campaign worked quite well was the fact that it wasn't just about our organisational needs in terms of, we had messages that we needed to communicate, and there were some objectives from that around people not putting the bin out too early, about where to store it and the things to do with that. But also it was that crossover into the audience needs, and when we looked at the Facebook and Twitter insights, we realised that one of their interests at the very top of the list was with comedy and humour. So by finding that sort of sweet spot in the middle, it really helps that campaign and message to spread further and to be better engaged with. So I think this is a key part of any kind of piece of content that we do. And it's back to basics really with marketing, isn't it? But it's about trying to find that sweet spot really. But just sort of taking a step back a bit, thinking about how this sort of campaign originated from, and that was really about us exploring more about becoming more human, I think, in our communications. So we went through a bit of an exercise where we tried to explore how this might feel and to really tease out that kind of band personality, which is really what this presentation is about today. So the sort of starting point for that was to explore our voice and tone of the content that we were producing, the stories that we were telling, and the conversations that we were having. And it started with us asking ourselves a series of questions. Now, all of these questions are actually sourced from a blog that Buffer, the app that's great for scheduling content, of course, crowd control, we did that as well, so I want to know a steal crowd control thunder. The questions that we asked ourselves were along these sort of lines. So I'll share the link to the actual article, but let's just sort of give an example of how this works in practice. So we asked ourselves, if the council was a person, what would their personality be like? So what we wanted to be like was certainly on the first page was optimistic. There's some really good stuff happening in Doncaster at the minute in terms of investment and development, and we've got some new construction, there's a brand new airport, we've got lots of cultural buildings that have been created and developed, new cinema, shops, etc. So, there's lots of optimistic stuff to share about the borough. I think secondly, we wanted to be sort of quite culturally aware, and not just from a political perspective, with us being a local authority, but actually more from a popular culture as well. And not to the point where it became a bit cheesy and we were trying to sort of get down with the kids and that kind of thing. It was more about just understanding the type of content that works, what's trending, what people are interested in on social media. So to be that more culturally aware, I guess. But, we are a big corporate organisation. I think there is that kind of desire for people to take a pop at us sometimes, and I think it's how we take that on the chin that's important. So this kind of concept of us being self-deprecating is a big part of where we've gone forward with some of our content. And with that, comes this idea of being a bit more playful and having those sort of cheeky conversations with people and getting a bit of fun and a bit of humour. And it does seem to go down quite well, I think. And then finally, we've got to be mindful that not everybody is going to be on board with what we're trying to do, or they might be coming to us with a very serious issue, a complaint or some sort of situation in their home that we need to deal with professionally and carefully. So we also need to be patient with those individuals who feel that way. So that was a big part of this, really. So on the flip side of that, what we didn't want to be, I won't read all of those out, clearly you can read, but I think that last point is an interesting one to point out, really. We didn't want to be sort of lemming-like, we didn't want to follow the crowd. As you well know, the social media is very difficult to get your message out across these days. There's so much noise, there's a lot of competition, so we had to be different to stand out from the crowd, really. Second question we asked ourselves was around this idea, which brands or people have personality that we aspire to. I'm sure you'll recognise plenty of these logos I'm just going to share now. So the first one was this one, that's Innocent. Innocent smoothies are amazing. I'm an absolute fanboy of all that stuff. And kind of our internal vision, I guess, for comms, certainly from a social media perspective, is to be the sort of council equivalent of Innocent with some of the things that we do, because their content's fat, so if you're not following them, I implore you to do so. Next one, slightly different. Wendy's, the burger chain in America, they're really sassy. I love how sassy they are, and we've just got quite a nice style with the way they respond to comments. And we've got to be careful. I guess we're a professional environment, but I think they tread the line really carefully. So I think they're certainly worth exploring in terms of pushing boundaries with how you have slightly more interesting conversations with the public. And then, of course, the route not to mention Yorkshire tea. I think plenty of it, but also it's more their kind of colloquial angle, I guess, really. We're from South Yorkshire, we're Yorkshire folk, we're very proud of our heritage, and if we can be more sort of colloquial in our language, really, that can make a big difference, really. So that's certainly someone who we model ourselves off, and their content's quite interesting. And I'm really sorry, I missed the World Cup. It's some fantastic content. Massive shout out to Orkney Library. It'd be amazing for somebody from here from Orkney, but I'm a big fan of your work. I'm sure plenty of people in here who also follow Orkney. Fantastic stuff, really behind the scenes content. They sort of show some of the very simple things that go on the island, but from a lovely perspective, lovely tone of voice, and it just makes you really love their organisation, I think, for what they do. So really worth following. And then finally, there's this fellow here. Anybody recognise Mr. James Blunt? You've maybe followed him on Twitter, and if so, you'll maybe sort of link back to the self-replication angle. He gets a lot of people ripping it out of him and taking the mark a bit, really. But he's very good with it. He comes out with some killer responses, and clearly, he does use some language that we wouldn't dare to use in the council. But still, his approach is quite interesting. So, if we do have people come in to the challenging conversations, it's a good opportunity to learn from Mr. Blunt. And then finally, there's this sort of question around, how do we want our customers to think about our personality? And for us, that was actually really quite strict, simple and straightforward one. So yeah, we just wanted people to appreciate the fact that we are a big organisation. For anybody to be a little bit different on social media from a local perspective, I think it's quite surprising for sometimes for people. So just for us to portray some stuff this heart, I think sometimes can be quite cool for people. So I mentioned about some resources that you can follow. This is a really lovely matrix that you can download and tweak yourself. It's quite an exercise to do with your team. To look at kind of the different aspects of a brand voice and personality. So you can see there's this sort of 4 quadrants there, where you can maybe get people to see what they feel the tone of the organisation is, or the character of the organisation is, and see how it compares to where you want to be. So I've provided the link there for you to have a look at in more detail. And then also there's other good websites like MailChimp. They expose their some brand guidelines and policy tone guidelines as a public available website. So strongly recommend you go have a look at that, and the way they present it is really lovely too. So yeah, plenty for you to look at there, really. And I'm sure we can pick up some more in the Q&A afterwards. So fundamentally, this was all about that foundation and building those sort of building blocks around us having much more consistent conversations with our audience, really. And by really getting to grips with our brand personality and exploring that further and getting everybody on board on that, it allows us to speak more consistently and for people to recognise who we are, no matter who it is that's actually behind the keyboard, so to speak. Just a short part around people and priorities. I think one thing that's really important is the environment in which you set up your social media presence and the sort of content and the time you spend around that. And I think, sort of first and foremost, one of the things which we recognise is that you genuinely cannot teach passion around social media and engaging in a sort of community management way. You need to have an individual in your team who really gets social media, I think. And if you does sit with somebody who perhaps isn't so confident, because it is can be a scary thing managing social media and particularly getting challenging conversations. You need to have that individual who I think is brave enough to take that forward and lives and breathes social media. And also, it's about carving out that time element as well, and that's something that we've tried to do. And I think is a big reason why we've had some successful pieces of content of late. Is just building in that time to be creative in that space. And all the ideas I think that we have tend to be through a production process and not necessarily just a light bulb moment. It's very lucky if you've got that ability or somebody in your team that can do that. So there's a lot of back and forth. I think a lot of planning involved. So if you can make that time to be more creative, I think your output will probably be more successful as a result of that, really. And not just time for the construction side of things, but also time for evaluating and testing content. And it's very easy to put stuff out on social media, but actually how it's working. Can you use the analytics to learn a bit more about that and see maybe if you use a different tone for a particular piece of message, did that work or did it not? So you can learn for future pieces of content, really. And finally, I think there's also that need to prepare for failure. I think that, at best, if you're testing the boundaries and you're doing things differently, at best that might be that the content just doesn't really work, you don't get the engagement that you're hoping for, which is fine, you just got to learn from it and move on. But then at worst, it could be that actually you end up causing some sort of major reputational issue with your organisation, and God forbid it happens, and we've not sort of had that really yet at Doncaster, but the more that you push the boundaries, the greater the chance of that happening. So it's about how would you respond to that, and there's plenty of guidelines and evidence and examples of how to do that. So I won't go into too much detail about that today, but it's definitely worth considering. So just to sort of provide a bit more real-world context into this, I had the absolute pleasure of seeing Helen Langdon from Innocent present earlier this year at an event. And she talked about this wonderful concept of how Innocent embrace the power of nonsense in terms of the content that they put out there. So you've maybe seen their stapler on the 4th floor and the journeys that it had across the world. And just those simple things that happen in all of our organisations, and when you share those with the world, actually you can sort of get a nice insight into what's going on at that organisation. So just sort of to give you an example of this from our perspective, one day we had a very interesting message come into our Facebook inbox saying, yes, baby, want to hook up, which, is lovely. So we came up with a bit of a cheeky response. It's kind of you to offer, but, we're a Metropolitan Borough Council providing the majority of local government services in Doncaster, so it's maybe not kind of cool for us to do that. And, it was all kept in the inbox and couldn't think much more of it, but it was still sort of making us chuckle throughout the day. And we got to the end of that day and thought, do you know what, maybe we should just share this with the world, just for a bit of humour at the end of the day, because it was a bit of a boring Monday. So that's what we did. We shared it through Twitter with the Monday Motivation hashtag, and, it seemed to actually go down quite well. We started to have comments come in. We had Kerry, who was suggesting that there's a bit of a love story potentially happening here. So, they were back to that, and we just want to clarify a bit, what kind of love? The kind of love that we have in the parking fine, what kind of new potted dog family. And, we're quite lucky that we've started to build a bit of an international audience, so we inevitably get people like Michelle from Minnesota who, need a bit of clarification around some of the local language that we use. So, we're a full service, so we wanted to speak that translation to provide that support. So yeah, a bit serious, but there is a reason to be showing this because this conversation continued throughout the night, and then we realised that all of a sudden Twitter did this. They actually managed to pick up the conversation and made it into a Twitter moment, and not just a Twitter moment on their UK feed, but they actually shared the conversation across their international Twitter moments feed, which was lovely. I was sat at home and doing my business watching Bake Off or something like I tend to do on a night. And my phone went into meltdown, which was absolutely bizarre. So I'm not sharing this with you, to boast. So this is not what this is about. But it's just showing you that actually the power of social media, and just by sharing the simplest of things and by embracing that content that is perhaps something you would previously share, the impact that potentially can have. And we would be talked about publicly across the world in a very positive light. And this sort of comes up to this point really about subverting people's expectations. And we are a big organisation. We are sort of there to be sort of picked up on and queried. And I think people expect from a local organisation or from a public sector organisation a particular way of speaking. So if you can speak that a little bit differently, it does subvert those expectations. And that's sort of an example of that really is thinking about it from your own perspective and your own social media account and you use personally. What sort of content resonates with you? What things do you see that work for you? And if you are asked to put something out on behalf of another service, and for you it just seems dull, it seems boring, or it just doesn't work for you, why are you putting it out in that way? There's a real need for you to, I think, to trust your instincts, and that's certainly something we've found. And to flip that content on its head, because sometimes the most boring stuff can become the most interesting. And again, just to give you an example of this, where I think it works really well, is the service messages that we have to send out. This could be something like your website's going down for maintenance, or closing early because of something that's gone on. And again, just to give a real world example of this, back in January this year, we had our library that had to close because of the heating had broken. So it just turned into a bit of a cheeky thread about that being the case. But rather than just being a boring, sorry, the library's closing early, heating's broken, you will be closing. Again, it was just an opportunity to do that a little bit different and to share a few funds. So again, this is something that went out and seems to go on quite well. And the comments continued, and so on. So I think there's another 6 or 7 I'm not going to bore you with all of those. But again, it's just sort of sharing that content in a different way. And it's lovely because people picked up on that, and what we'd never normally have is a conversation around the fact that we used to work in the library, and we actually did get that from people. And it's not really great if you understood what we're trying to do, and picked up on the language choice in the copy as well. The fact that we used the heating factor. Speaking to people how they would potentially be spoken to, in just a very simplistic way. It's not necessarily dumbing down, but it's just speaking in a sort of more social language, I guess, really. And of course, not everybody picks up in a positive way, and it will quite blunt with their responses, but we'll have to get back to them. So just a bit of a word of warning with all of this, and I'm sure it goes without saying, we didn't do this overnight. This was a process that we built gradually, and we sort of up the ante, week by week, and message by message, to be honest with you. I think one of the things we've definitely learned is that you've really got to understand your community well, and if there's something big that's happening in your community, you really need to be aware of that and having some finger on the pulse and check the sentiment, because there have genuinely been times where we've simply not been able to be fun and to be quirky and different, because we know it wouldn't have gone down particularly well with the audience. So you have to sort of rein it back in again. And there's been weeks and months where we've not been able to be like that. So I think it's just a bit of a thing to point out that you do need to be aware of the kind of community sentiment that you have there, really. So really, the final thing for me is a bit of a case study around our most famous piece of content and the reasons why we feel it worked quite well. And it was all to do this kind of concept about us, keeping those conversations going and keeping people talking. And that's the Doncaster World Cup. So for those of you that might not have seen this, back in November last year, we decided that it was a good idea to have a naming competition of our gritters. Now, to be honest with you, it's not something that was unique. It had been done before. I think our friends over at Oldham had done this before. But perhaps we did it in a slightly different way, and it seemed to just go down absolutely brilliantly. We reached nearly 12 million people on Twitter and all was said and done. And also that was down to the language, the fact that we accepted a lot of responses from the public. But I think another part of it really was the fact that we sort of up the ante in terms of the number of responses and conversations that we had. On before that campaign and that situation, on average we were maybe putting out just over 200 tweets a month. But during that particular moment, we ended up with nearly 820 responses and replies and tweets going out there. So I know it kind of potentially contradicts my point about quality and quantity, but we were taking that time to have those discussions with people that were kind enough to engage with us. Why is that important? Aside from increasing the number of things we put out, it's important because, you know, every mention and every reply that you take the opportunity to put out there is an opportunity to reach a wider audience. And one of the things which was quite interesting that we found was, out of the blue, after all the sort of invites and names, we got one from a certain 80s legend, Mr. Curtis Stigers. He tweeted us with a suggestion, and that's we went back and forth with him. But then, with about 5-10 minutes, we noticed that Bob Mortimer had picked up on the conversation. He says, "Do you know what, guys? You'll never believe what's happening on Twitter right now. We've got Curtis Stigers having a conversation with Doncaster Council about gritting." And, you know, inevitably that sort of spread to their wide network of followers, and this is really where it snowballed and probably became the viral campaign that it was, really. And, you know, it ended up with lots of national media exposure, which was amazing, and, you know, it got on to The Last Leg and on to the Grand Tour and places we never dreamed that it would go. But we genuinely put this down to the fact that, you know, the time was taken in investing in responding to people and keeping those conversations going. And that wasn't just during the day, but it was also in the night time as well. You know, we had to sort of take it on the chin and keep responding to keep those conversations going. So I suppose on one hand, you could argue that, you know, luck was important in the fact that we picked up two really high influencers to help spread that message further. But maybe you could argue that, you know, we sort of created that luck in the fact that we were constantly going back and responding to people, no matter what the responses were, really, but just to keep those conversations going. So that hopefully serves as a really good case study, I think, for the brand personality coming into there, and the time that it takes to produce something creative, and the time it takes to respond, and you know, just sort of sharing that personality a bit more in terms of content that goes out there. So that's actually it from me. So thank you very much for your time. If you don't follow us already, you know, please make sure you follow my Doncaster. I'm at Rob Jefferson, and I think it's over to Dan now to have the Q&A session.
Amazing. Thanks, Rob. Yeah, really, really interesting stuff. And I think for everyone listening today or watching the recording, it's some of the slides there just really, really insightful and really actionable, especially when you were showing like how you'd kind of listed your personality traits, you know, if your Twitter account was going to be a person, and how you just approached it. I think for anyone that's trying to get started on building their own personality and tone of voice, I think it's just really, really super useful. So thanks a lot for that. I'm going to dive into the questions.
Okay.
A little bit. So, so one for you, I guess, Rob. How much does the social media tone of voice play in other non-social media channels, if it does at all, or?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, because we've just very recently had a debate and some ideas and planning around how we've almost kind of created a bit of a monster here, because by being a bit informal and different and quirkier on social media, particularly when it comes to a campaign where we have people coming to a landing page on our website, you know, they've gone from this kind of informal language to then a very corporate style of language on the website. Yeah. So how can we bring that personality through more onto our web content, and, you know, whether it's printed collateral or whatever it might be. And I think there's a real need for us to explore that further. So I think this is only really the beginning of our journey. You know, clearly it seems to work quite well on social media, but I think probably an ability to try and change that language a bit more on some of our other channels and platforms, and particularly the website. Yeah, it'd be really interesting to bring that sort of South Yorkshire colloquialism into there, really, and see how that goes down, really. So yeah, we've certainly got a plan over the next 12 months to introduce that more, and I've had the challenge from the chief exec to do that. So that's certainly my list going forward.
Interesting stuff. Yeah, makes sense. So was the change gradual, or did you get any backlash internally or externally? I guess this is when you sort of first adopted the lighter sort of personality tone of voice, you know, with the humour and whatnot.
Yes, it was definitely something we did gradually. You know, I think if we just overnight decided, right, from today we're going to change and be different, it would have been such a shock to the system for people, I think. So it was just, you know, conversation by conversation, week by week, month by month, just starting to change the way in which we were speaking on social media. And I think that worked well, and it didn't cause those kind of shocks from people, and people like, what are you talking about? Why are you speaking this way? I think it just became a very natural evolution, really. And I must admit, I was still expecting to sort of see some more complaints about it, or people not really getting it and understanding. And you know yourself, Dan, you know, when this webinar was advertised, one of the people replied to it on Twitter and said, "I don't understand. How can a council have a personality on social media?" And I expected a bit more of that, really. But no, I think on the whole, people really started to get that, and they actually appreciated it. You know, particularly on Twitter, we were getting lots of positive comments, and we picked up a much broader audience, because it's quite interesting on Facebook. I would say 90% of our followers are pretty much from the South Yorkshire region, and particularly Doncaster and the surrounding area. Whereas on Facebook, where we've done a lot more of this work, it's been a much broader audience. You know, only 50% of our followers on there probably from the Yorkshire and Humber region. We can't drill down any further, so we've got a much wider audience across the world, frankly. And I'd say 95% of responses we get, thankfully, are really positive, and they recognise what we've been doing, and you know, they see it as a positive thing for a council to be speaking in that way. That's a bit more human, and that's what it comes down to, I think, really.
Yeah, and you touched on the good point there. When we were promoting this webinar on Twitter, it's actually quite a nice case study to see. I think it was you, Rob, that was responding to that gentleman, just really keeping it positive and like explaining sort of the value and like why it's a good thing, rather than end up being in a sort of troll battle. I thought it was a nice example of actually how to handle sort of complaints or a bit of negativity. Really interesting to see. So what does your team structure look like? We're trying to make sure we have the right people and the right number of people, and can argue for the budget to do so.
Yeah, interesting. We're going through a bit of a period of change at the moment. One of the things I didn't highlight in the presentation was the fact that when I talked about having time to work on this kind of thing, one of the officers was pretty much working with me full time to make this work, because it gave me the opportunity to really build that relationship with the community that we have on our social media channels. So we actually dedicated that individual for the resource for that, really. And I think that was a big reason why it worked well. So I think we need to continue that. But then at the same time, you know, my boss is very keen to make sure that we share the load, and that there's an ability for the rest of the team to be a part of this and sort of share the sweets, if you like, and be part of that process. And thankfully, a lot of them were involved in lots of the creative pieces that we've done. You know, the whole team pretty much were involved with the raising of the waistcoat on the local flag pole. Well, we did this thing, but there we are. But you know, I think the nature of the social media, I think you probably do need to reduce the size of it initially in terms of the people that are responding, because that's where you're building that consistency. And then once everybody starts to get behind it and understand what you're trying to do with it, and I think you can open it out wider. But it's like anything, the more people you have, I guess the harder it is to kind of keep that tone and voice and consistency there. So I don't know how much I can go into detail, but we're sort of changing that, the way we're structured at the moment, and we were very much based, whereas we're now going to align more with the sort of structure of the council in terms of the directorates that we have. We're still going to have a creative team, which I'll be heading up. So social media actually officially comes under me from the 1st of September. It hasn't been briefed. Kind of like unofficially been doing that. So yeah, that's certainly going to continue in my team, and we'll still have, you know, very much a dedicated individual to that, I think, in our team. But we still definitely want to get the rest of the team on board to be a part of that journey, and to build on their skills, I think, really, as well.
Yeah, interesting. Nice. And I guess that change has come about because of the initial sort of, because of the sort of success that you've had and the level of interactions and engagements and things. It sort of proves the value of social a little bit, and then allows you to sort of look at your team again and think about how you're resourcing it and structuring it and whatnot.
Yeah, that's it. It comes down to that time point, and I think what's been marvellous about the whole experience is that the success that we've had has really helped with morale. It's really boosted the team. I think by having other people as part of that creative process, you know, they've seen a piece of content that's gone viral, and they played a part in that. So it's a very powerful thing for the team to be involved with. Although, you know, kind of stages are maybe with one or two individuals, by having a wider creative process that involves those people, you know, they get to enjoy the success as well. And we wouldn't want it to sit with one individual and hide them away from that. It's got to be the whole team that's part of that process.
Yeah, makes sense. So yeah, I mean, there's plenty of questions coming in, so we'll get through as many, as many as we can. Lots of people are worried about being inundated with questions and comments and not being able to manage it all. How do you make the time in your team's schedule? Interesting question, I guess.
I presume this. So I've just got a cat that's just jumped onto my lap. So I just going to tell here. This is me. Yeah, it's good question, that one. And again, I think it comes back to that time and that resource and having that individual who has got time to respond to people.
Yeah.
If you respond, you don't necessarily get the exposure that you potentially can have. I wouldn't. It's funny. A lot of the conversations that we have had have maybe not been anything too serious, or when it comes, because I know one of the issues that a lot of people have with things is how do you measure the impact? How do you prove that it's worth doing this kind of thing? And it is difficult, but I think it comes down to, oh, have I disappeared or am I still there?
No, you're still there. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, just disappeared from my screen. I think it comes down to the positive reputation. We've had so many people recognise Doncaster Council as an organisation now that does do social a little bit differently. And when you put it in the context of like the invasion and some of the more campaigns that had a clear outcome around a service that's been delivered, by changing that tone of voice and being a little bit different helps with the campaign objectives. So it's not just about being silly and just having sort of informal conversations and not a lot coming from that, but by building up those conversations then allows you to do more stuff with the clear-cut campaigns. So I think that really is what it comes down to. But again, it's just that time thing. You've got to make the time to answer those queries and to have those conversations and to build up those relationships with your audience, because then actually, this is something that Joe Miller, our chief exec, talked about in the past. Until, in times of crisis, if you've not built up that relationship with the community in the first place,
Yeah.
when it comes to crisis, you're not going to have them there to support you. But by taking that time up front to build those relationships, is a very important thing. And if we can do that through social media as a starting point, then fantastic.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point. It's easy to sort of overlook. If you're in the crisis and you don't have those relationships, it's a little bit too late at that point. So you need to do a bit of groundwork, build it up in the first place. That's a good point. So this is a very interesting one. I'm not sure. Yeah. So with PR and social media morphing into one, where do you see how the press fits in maybe in 5 years' time? And then in brackets, hopefully the need for press releases and the way we work with journalists reduces and we move to a more digital focus. So do you get involved on that side of things at all, Rob, on the sort of PR side and journalists and whatnot?
Who's it that's asked that question?
So this was one of the ones that we got sent offline before the webinar started. Yeah.
I like that one because it's quite pertinent for us. Again, I think probably if I go back to the example of the raising of the waistcoat during the World Cup to honour Gareth Southgate. It's fundamentally a silly piece of content. We would never have dreamed of putting out a press release for that kind of thing. But when it came to measuring the impact of that, we picked up through our media monitoring system that there's actually lots of press engagement and coverage through that on a national and even international level. Granted, I think it helped that it was the World Cup. But you can still measure that, and I think it just shows that actually the social media content that we produce can still be a way to reach people through the traditional press and media. So I think there is that natural convergence anyway through social media as a tool to certainly share what's going on in an organisation. And whilst maybe the days of sending press releases are not quite as important as they once used to be, I think for us, we can still reach those people and maybe even reach a wider audience that we would normally have had locally by using social media as the publishing mechanism for us. So almost we become the publisher and don't necessarily have to rely upon the press to do so. But clearly we're not necessarily going to reach an international audience on our own, and it helps when you get the likes of Sports Illustrated, one of the examples of the organisations who picked up on the Gareth Southgate story, and they've got 20 million people that view their website every day. So we couldn't have dreamed of that coverage if we just sent out a traditional press release. So I think, yeah, again, it comes back to that relationships point as well, particularly with journalists. And, you know, most journalists these days are on Twitter, and you can, you know, maybe contact them directly and say that this is going to happen, and as a traditional sort of PR process would potentially be the case. But inevitably, I think people pick up on the content anyway, and do end up sharing it, and particularly if it's something that gets a bit of traction and becomes viral. So, yeah, I think in short, you know, that social is allowing us to become our own publishers and to reach audiences we would never have potentially reached through more traditional means. But that doesn't mean to say that, you know, the media doesn't play its part anymore. I think that's definitely not the case. It's just working with them in a different way.
Yeah, makes sense. So I've got an interesting question here. Are all inquiries dealt with by the comms team and then not customer services?
It depends. Again, it's something that we're still developing, really, and we've been having the debate for a while about whether we need to separate channels out and have a dedicated customer service channel. One of the sort of disadvantages, if you like, of when we have had a lot more engagement, particularly on Twitter, is it's very difficult to separate the customer service inquiries from just the general banter and the conversations that we're having off the back of some of our content that we've produced. And I think we've got to the threshold now where we probably do need that separate channel for customer services. I think it will allow us to do potentially a bit more on the weekend, because we'll have somewhere to signpost people to, you know, still have conversations with our customer service colleagues. But yeah, I think we've just over time built up that relationship with our customer service team, so they kind of know which is content and inquiries for them to pick up on, and stuff that we, as the comms team, needs to pick up on. So it doesn't be one or the other. You know, we both look at the same feeds, but just over time, organically, that kind of understanding is grown. But I think over the next few months, we'll look at setting up that separate Twitter account purely for customer services. And, you know, if it works, if it doesn't, we'll look to roll it back, I guess, really. But I just don't think there's a need at the moment for Facebook particularly, because it seems to be working quite well with the inbox.
Cool. So it's an interesting question from our side as well, because obviously a lot of the organisations we work with, they want to do just that, actually, as you described, where they want to be able to have like comms team not be overwhelmed, I guess, like with a lot of sort of the customer service inquiries and comments and questions. So like that's one of the areas where we actually help them, is to sort of put in place like little workflows and smart rules to help separate, okay, what goes to the customer services team to respond, and then what's just sort of engagement and banter, you know, on the social streams. It's a really interesting area.
It's my worst nightmare that we miss customer contact because we're and you know that shouldn't be the case, and we definitely shouldn't be having that happen. So particularly at times when we've had a piece of content do well, you know, that's always something I want to be mindful that we didn't have happening. So that was manually keeping track of that. That was the only way we could do it at that stage.
Yeah, makes sense. So last couple of questions, I think. How have you communicated challenges around austerity and services changes? This is a big priority for us at the moment. We want to show residents we do more than bins and look after lots of vulnerable residents.
There's nothing much like things. Social media. No, it's a really, really good point. I think the answer to that is about being honest and transparent. I think that worked quite well for us. Have those tricky conversations. You know, there's things that we as local government can't afford to do anymore. And I think we've got a tricky conversation to have with our communities about that, and to make people understand. And you know, especially when it ends up with social issues on the street and the impacts of that kind of thing, it's very, very challenging for us to have those conversations. But I think where it's relevant and where we can add value to those conversations, it's an important part of those. You know, it's very interesting around groups that have been set up now in localities, and whether we can engage with them more, and how that goes. Again, that links back to the resource question, I guess, really about, you know, how do we spend time more proactively in those Facebook communities. And I know our colleagues who are looking after communications with adult social care and transformation and that kind of thing are having some very interesting conversations about that at the moment, and how that might work practically. So I think, yeah, fundamentally it's that transparency angle, being honest and having those conversations that there are services that, you know, are reducing, and that we are going to have to meet those challenges going forward. But in terms of actual campaigns, I'm trying to think of anything specific, but there's been a few bits and bobs we've done around homelessness, particularly during the Beast from the East in sort of March,
Yeah.
April time. And there were some more serious Twitter threads that we put out. They still had GIFs, they still had emojis in there. So I know some people have sort of asked me the question, how do you use those things in more serious conversations and topics? And I think you can. It's just got to be done very tastefully and very carefully. So again, I think the Twitter moment that we've got on our thread that's worth having a look at about homelessness. And again, I think it's just providing that support, that value, and that honest conversation really.
Yeah, makes sense. So I'm just conscious of the time, so this might be the last question, and it's a big one, Rob.
Oh, blimey!
Are you ready?
Okay, I'm prepared.
What's your cat called?
Mia. She's called Mia. She's just sat in my lap. Oh no, she's run away. Yeah, Mia is our cat. So yeah, she keeps me company when I'm working from home. So
nice. Tries to walk across the keyboard and all that usual stuff. I've got two, and they do the same. So I think that's it. I think we're good, Rob. So I just want to say, thanks so much for joining us. Been a real pleasure to hear the story of sort of your journey. I would say, like of building your personality and tone of voice. And I'm sure it's going to be super helpful for all the other organisations we had joining us today. So thanks a lot.
No problem at all, Dan. Thanks for inviting me along, and thanks to those that have taken the time out of their busy day to come and have a chat and listen to what we've got to say. It's been a really humbling experience to have the interest that we've had. We've been overwhelmed with really positive comments, and it's we're quite a humble bunch, so it's lovely to have the opportunity to share some of the stories that we've had, and hopefully try and help other people out with some of the successes and maybe the failures that we've had as well. So thanks for the time as well.
Amazing, thanks. So before I jump off, just wanted to quickly plug, so we're going to be at the LG Comms Academy in October in Birmingham. So if anyone on the session today is going to be there, make sure you stop by our stand and have a chat, have a coffee, and yeah, we'd love to sort of connect and talk to you. And Rob, I guess we'll catch up again soon. Oh, yep.
Sorry, just speaking of plugs, you just reminded me something I meant to mention, if you don't mind me being really cheeky. Okay. We've actually at Doncaster Council at the moment, so if you are in comms and you want a full-time position, a part-time position in a comms officer role, or you're a designer, we're looking for a designer and creative services officer. So please spread the word. You've got until the 3rd of September, so nice. Get that out there.
No worries at all. I think that's also that's promoted on your Twitter account. I think I've seen it popping up there. So there's the link. I guess the link is there if anyone wanted to go and.
Yeah, Doncaster Council.
There you go. Perfect. All right, cool. Right, thanks a lot, Rob. Thanks everyone for joining. Hope to see you all again on a future webinar, and if not, enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks a lot.
Thanks very much. Cheers.